how could you like going to China? Don't you worry about getting arrested?
Yeah.
This was the common consensus that most Americans had. Even in America, where everyone believes that no one will ever claim to be a follower, there is that following trend.
Yeah.
我是王炳忠，王炳忠来了。
Hello, my friends. I'm very glad to be here in Beijing, and it's my distinguished opportunity to meet and interview my friend, Thomas Poken, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and maybe let me introduce you
Sure.
first to my audience. I can call you Tom, right?
Yes, of course.
Tom is a friend of Chinese people, and Tom is a commentator, journalist, and columnist, right? Analyst.
Yes, I do consulting.
Analysis on cross-strait relations and Asia-Pacific issues.
Sure.
And you're based in Beijing now.
Yes.
I think you have lived in Beijing for several years.
Yes.
How many years?
For about 13 years.
13 years.
Yeah,
Oh, so
2010.
long.
Yeah.
13 years. So about 2010.
Yes, 2010.
Oh, okay. So maybe we have some personal stories
Sure.
and we can share with each other, right?
Okay.
Because I know you just finished your research trip
Yes.
in Taiwan,
Of course.
right?
Yeah.
About last month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said I'm the real only guy who supports unification with Chinese mainland.
That I met. The
You
whole
met.
time, yes.
Yeah.
You had very unique
Unique.
opinions.
Okay,
in Taiwan.
unique opinion,
Yeah.
quite different from so-called the mainstream
Sure.
in Taiwan society.
Yeah.
And then maybe you also have some independent thinking, different
Sure.
from Western
Yes.
mainstream, right?
Sure.
The fact that I'm the only real guy who supports unification you met in Taiwan,
Sure.
Is it a surprise to you, or can I say it shocked you?
Well, I mean, shock might be a negative term.
Yeah.
But surprise, I would say, more in a positive way. Because what I've noticed in Taiwan is when I interviewed a lot of people,
Yes.
they almost said the same exact answers. You asked them about President Tsai and when she visited the U.S., they always said, oh, it's just a transit visit. And then she also visited Belize, and then she visited Guatemala. So it was more important, her visits to those countries than the U.S. So what I discovered is that many people in Taiwan were saying they sounded like they were reading a script. But I made it a point to meet different types of people, KMT people, DPP people, foreigners who came to Taiwan.
Yes.
And so I was looking for different answers because
Different
I just
answers.
wanted to see if this was people were trained to be scripted, or was this a culture? And so when I met you, I was like, wow, this guy does not read the script.
Okay. So you think I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'm a kind of independent thinker.
Very much so.
Yeah. Okay, I got it. And maybe can I share my personal story
Sure.
first? Yeah.
Sure.
I think including you and my audience are curious that why I become a supporter or even promoter
Sure.
for Chinese unification. And I have some reasons, politics, culture, and history. But I think the very first influence on my thinking about my identity as a Chinese resulted from my reading and my experience in watching some TV dramas during early 1990s. And those dramas were produced by Taiwan video companies. You know, this is a very key point because those dramas were produced by Taiwan ourselves. And the stories those dramas played was related to Chinese ancient stories, such as 新白娘子传奇, the legend of White Snake. You know, that drama is still very popular until now in Chinese mainland. So for my first time, I watched that TV drama. I was only about 7 or 8 years old. And when I watched those stories, those Chinese ancient legends, I would think, okay, Chinese stories were our stories, ourselves. And those dramas were produced by Taiwanese ourselves. It's, of course, we Taiwanese are also Chinese. I'm a Chinese. So that is a kind of my original thinking on my identity as a Chinese. And several years later, when I was about 12 years old, I think, I watched many political TV shows. Most influential one for me was anchored by Li Ao. I don't know if you know him or not. He is a famous writer in Taiwan, Li Ao, and he was born in Chinese mainland.
Okay.
And he immigrated to Taiwan about 1949 when he was only a child. I think he was almost the only one and the first one introducing the theory of Chinese unification, especially one country, two systems. He's the first one who taught the theory to Taiwan's audience. So when I watched it, I was only 12 years old with my father. But that's the first, I think, impact on my political thinking of unification. Yeah, so that's my personal story.
Okay,
I think maybe it cannot be copied to other people.
Sure. Well, everyone has their own personal stories.
Yeah, everyone has
exactly.
its own. And how about your own personal story? Because I'm also very curious about you, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I was always a very independent thinker. I was not a follower. So I always respected people who are not followers and independent thinkers, because what it shows to me is I've learned a lot. To be an independent thinker requires a lot of courage.
Courage, yes.
Because a lot of times people, what I saw in Taiwan was a lot of people who were following a certain mainstream thinking. And that I think part of that is their culture is they're afraid to look different, because then they may take harsh criticism from it. But a real independent thinker, a real leader, cannot be a follower, cannot be a person who follows the popular trends. They have to see what is now and see what is the best solutions. So in regards to how I came to China, why I do what I do, it's basically, well, there's a long story, but what I can say is that, for example, when I was a kid, there was a time I used to live in Washington, D.C. From 1981 to around early 1985. I discovered I was very comfortable living in Washington, D.C., and you were in a city that was completely obsessed with politics. Even as a kid, you go to school, their parents were somehow connected to government. So the entire culture and society was all very highly politically charged. Democrats, Republicans, but I just felt comfortable in that kind of city and environment where this is where the real action is happening. Because government is really having influence on how the economy and the society. And so what happened is in around 1985, my father decided to move out of Washington, D.C. We go to Texas. And
You're a Texan?
Well, yeah, actually I was born in Texas.
Yeah.
But it was, let's just say, a big culture shock. They didn't care about politics. Well, of course, they're children. They wanted their normal lives. So they liked sports and other stuff.
So totally different.
Yeah, so the real reason I became so, let's just say, obsessed with politics or constantly monitoring politics is because when I moved from Washington to Texas, it was too much of a culture shock for me. So the only way I felt anyways happy was by paying attention to politics. And so I would read the newspapers. I would pay attention to the news. In politics, it's also the case in America, if you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, a lot of times they just follow a certain belief system based on what the party leadership says.
Yes. Followers, right?
Exactly. So even in America, where everyone believes that no one will ever claim to be a follower, there is that following trend. Okay, you saw it, I'm sure, if you visited the U.S.
Yes.
And what I realized is as I became older and really started understanding politics more in depth, at first I was a cold warrior. I thought China was bad, Russia was bad, only because everyone
say that.
Yeah, everyone said it, just like you saw in Taiwan. Just everyone says it, and you have to believe, you have to support it. My actual changing on China and Russia began when I lived in South Korea as just an ESL teacher.
Oh, so you ever lived in South Korea?
Yeah, I lived there from 2001 to 2007. And what was interesting was I was meeting South Korean business people who said they loved their trips to China. And see, I thought China was this evil communist country. So I would ask them, well, how could you like going to China? Don't you worry about getting arrested?
Yeah.
Okay, because this was the common consensus that most Americans had, even after the reform and opening up, was that China was still very Maoist. Okay, so they were telling me all these great stories, and then I decided to visit Shanghai in about 2007.
2007 is your first
Time to visit China.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, this is a great city. It's a real business city. There's normal people here, and they're just, they don't talk about politics. They're talking about their daily lives.
Yeah.
And see, that's the real China. Is it's not the political, it's just living life as is, but people put the stereotype on China. So when I discovered that there were a lot of complex nuances to how politics was, I felt like it was part of my calling to explain the world to Americans, and then when I'm outside, to explain America to the world.
Yep.
And that's the same thing with China. I talk to the Chinese, they ask me about America. I go to America, they only want to ask me about China.
Yeah.
Because I'm the China guy. You know, I lived there for a long time. When I went there in 2019, everywhere I went, oh, Tom's a China guy. He's just got these great stories about China. You know, and of course, a lot of them will complain. But then when they listen to me, they discover, oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because China's reform and opening up is the reason I actually came to China.
Okay.
If China did not have its reform and opening up that was led by Deng Xiaoping, I would not be here.
Okay.
So what I often tell people is the reason I want to help China is because I want to help China continue on with its path of reform and opening up.